early. Okay, good morning, everyone. We are starting chapter 41, which is the title is A Crash Course in Reverence and Love. So it's interesting that where in Tanya do we get a crash course? Tanya is, goes into the depth of everything, and it's goes over and over things. So a crash course sounds already exciting for a change. What we are going to discuss, and I'll tell you, chapter 41 is one of the most learned chapter in Tanya. I mentioned that, I think, the last time. When we are in yeshiva and we study Tanya, they encourage the yeshiva students to study chapter 41 by heart and to meditate on this chapter before prayer.
Wow. It's a big chapter to remember.
Yes. Matter of fact, in the yeshiva in Chabad, there's always been a campaign that a bar mitzvah boy should study Tanya. Boys and girls study Tanya by heart. There's a very big emphasis in Talmud to memorize Torah by heart. Specifically Mishnah, and so for example, Mishnah is not the Talmud; it's the condensed version, so to speak. And there's also campaigns, incentives for the kids to learn. And as a child, I learned a lot of Mishnah and Tanya by heart. And those things that you learn by heart as a child kind of stick in your brain; you can't forget. We're talking learning by heart, literally word by word. So a bar mitzvah boy, many times they would take on as a mitzvah or as a resolution to study the first 12 chapters of Tanya by heart. That's a lot of pages. And also, obviously some kids are more inclined, some people are less inclined, but obviously it's not a must, but it's encouraged, and there's always incentives. My father used to give me, I believe it was $1 or a franc, Swiss franc, a line that I learned by heart. And for every Mishnah, which is a few lines, will be like 5 francs, it's about $5. And that was an incentive as a child. And I saved up that money, and he invested the money with me. I think when I turned like 18, that money turned into a $10,000 investment. With my bar mitzvah money, with my money I learned by heart. And it was just so my father taught me how to learn things by heart, incentivized, and also taught me some core business principles of saving. All right, where that money is today, I don't know. So I should have kept it inside. All right, but
in your kids.
That's good.
In your kids.
And I do similar stuff with my kids. It's interesting because you typically like to do the things that you had that made such an impression as a child that your parents did for you. You also want to duplicate that to your children, give that over to your children. So, all right. So chapter 41. Let's dive in and let's read it. What I like about it is, and it's so people always gravitate to that. It's the idea of meditation. Jewish meditation is very different than your traditional meditation. Matter of fact, the next JLI course is titled Meditation from Sinai. It's a 6-week course on Jewish meditation, which we're going to give in February. And it's going to be a lot from Tanya. So, yes, Bella.
Good question. I'm taking a course now of life and after death. Is it the same course that you gave once? Is it the same or not?
I don't know. It's on Chabad.org, right?
Yeah.
I didn't look into it so much. I don't know if it's exact. I don't think it's exactly the same curriculum, but definitely the same information.
Yeah. Okay.
And if they say something that contradicts what I said, speak up.
No, so far, everything is familiar.
I'm getting requests to do this course over and over again. The life after death. Like people are obsessed with this topic. And I can understand why, but let's go and start chapter 41. Page 492, a crash course in reverence and love, section 1, how to start worshiping God. Really, the whole point here is let's get down to practical. Till now, everything was a study, was intellectual. Let's go, how do we do this practical? Now that we have discussed the theoretical importance of reverence and love, which was the two wings of the bird, right? Love and reverence when observing the Torah, the wings of a bird, which enables a mitzvah to fly heavenward. The Tanya will now spend the next 9 chapters exploring practical methods to generate these emotions. We will be taught meditations that are designed to produce a variety of feelings. And we will also be guided in how to recognize different stages of emotional maturity. First, we will turn our attention to the basic feeling of reverence for God, which the Tanya will argue must be the foundation of all worship. So just the get-go, meditation is for the purpose that we should develop certain emotions and to know before we start where are we in our emotional productivity, emotional stage, that you know, have you reached a emotional maturity in terms, we're talking here very specific in terms of my emotional relationship with Hashem. And when I pray, when I do a mitzvah, there has to be the two wings, what he calls love and fear or reverence, and why that is so important. So he says like this, but you need to remember always the beginning of worship, as well as its ongoing foundation and nourishing root, which is reverence, not love. Reverence is the basic feeling upon which your relationship with God should be founded. You will never graduate from the need for reverence. Even as your worship matures, it will always remain with you, just as a root nourishes a tree. Love, as we shall see later, is of extreme importance in worship, but it is, so to speak, the building and not the foundation. Because even though we learned above that reverence is the root which motivates a person not to transgress any prohibitions, to turn away from evil, and love motivates the observance of positive commandments to do good, which implies that neither reverence nor love is the root of all the mitzvahs. It's kind of both are roots. One is the root for the negative mitzvah, reverence, and love is the root for the positive mitzvahs. Nevertheless, as we shall see, actually reverence that forms the basis of all worship, and love merely energizes the positive commands, but it's not their foundation. It is not sufficient to awaken love alone to do good. And before awakening love, you first need to awaken, if not profound reverence, resulting from inner meditative work, then at least the innate reverence found dormant in the heart of all Israel. This basic reverence being not to act insubordinately towards the King of Kings, the Blessed One, as mentioned above. Reverence will motivate you to worship God when He desires it, and not just when you feel like it. If you attach to your own self-importance, you reveal that all your worship is really self-service. It's just another type of pleasure that you do to gratify yourself. You need to awaken the innate reverence so that it should be manifest openly in your heart. Or if you can't do that, at least awaken some reverence through focusing your mind, which is under your control, to think as you will. Feeling the invisible God should ideally be palpable in the heart, just as you would feel for something that you see with your eyes. But if you can manage that, it's okay. As long as you can muster some sense of reverence in your mind, you can worship God. And the way to do this is by reflecting on the greatness of the Blessed Infinite One, even if not with intense focus of your mind, then in your general thought at least. So let's recap. He's saying this, folks. We learned that for every mitzvah, there's a body of the mitzvah and there's the soul of the mitzvah. The body of the mitzvah is the action, and the soul is the kavanah, the intention. What are the intentions? We discussed all these different types of levels of intention. The intention is what infuses the mitzvah. But in general, there's two in Hebrew: ava, which is love, and yira, which is reverence. And those two are the two wings of the bird that lift every mitzvah. But we asked in the beginning, because in the beginning of Tanya we learned that really, also the first of the two Ten Commandments is ava and yira. Ava is the first commandment. I am the Lord, your God, which is the positive. I am the Lord. The second commandment is, right? Don't worship any other gods. It's the positive and the negative. It's ava, it's the positive. Love is positive. Reverence is typically, out of reverence, I don't do things that go against God's wishes. It holds me back from transgressing against Hashem. So although there are in two categories, what he's saying here, every mitzvah, even a positive mitzvah, needs to have reverence as well, and for sure love as well. What type of reverence? And now we think that, okay, if it comes to a positive mitzvah, the main wing is love. He says, no, not true. The main foundation, the root is reverence. The building is ava, is love. So in a sense, it begins with reverence. And we can understand that also in a relationship, with any relationship. And we discussed that again in Tanya over and over. But let's recap. In every relationship, if there is no reverence, there's no respect, there's no awe for the other party, it is only love, then the love many times is self-serving. It's for your own pleasure. It's not about the other person, it's about yourself. And their boundaries will cross because the love is expansive, it doesn't restrict. In every relationship, there has to be boundaries. The foundation, the boundaries have to be in place, otherwise the love will end up in the wrong place. Everyone understands that.
That's interesting.
Right? So in our worship with Hashem, something we don't look at it at the same way. We don't look at it as a relationship between spouses. We look at it, okay, I gotta serve God. I love God, right? I love God. He does so much for me. He's so great. He's so amazing. And I want to do all the things, right, to express my love to Hashem. It goes aching to people who have the idea that in life they want to be spiritual, and they will create their own spiritual path or their own spiritual direction that they choose, how they want to express their love to God. And many times it has nothing to do with God, it has more to do with their expression, right? So what God had to say, what God says, do and don't do, they don't care. It's not me, it's God, it's on God's terms. I want to express it on my terms. I want it to be my personal expression. And not that it's bad. I mean, it's definitely not Torah-like, to say, I don't care about Shabbos, I don't care about kosher, I don't care about all those rituals that God prescribed, all those to-do lists, so to speak, because the person looks at it as a to-do list. It doesn't look at it, as we learn in Tanya, that the mitzvah is an infinite connection that I have the ability to tap in, that God has chosen to have a relationship with me. But if I don't look at it this way, I just look at it as me to God, then what does reverence have to do with this? Yeah, God is amazing, there's certain reverence, but that's not that important. To me, it's the love of God. And here in Tanya says, if you have that type of love, it's false in a sense, it's self-serving. So number one. Number two, your foundation really has to be, the root has to be reverence. You know what reverence does? Reverence makes you less. Reverence makes you humble. Reverence makes you, it's not about you, it's about what can I do for them? What can I do for Hashem? Ask not what God can do for you, ask what you can do for Hashem. It's the question that you ask yourself. Reverence makes you more humble. And that's the root. And that's why the love that I want to develop and express, if it's not with the root, it's not proper love. And that's why reverence has to be as much as it's in the negative to stop me from doing something negative. For sure, it has to be as well, and if not more, when it comes to a positive commandment. Now he said, how do we bring that out? Practical, how do I bring reverence of Hashem? How do I work on that? So he said meditation, right? Meditating on God, developing a awakening of this love and reverence for Hashem. If you don't have the intellectual maturity, or you don't have the ability to do so, then step 2, awaken, right? He says, at the very least, awaken the innate love and reverence that every Jew has in their DNA, that is found dormant in the heart of a Jew. It's a very interesting and a powerful foundational teaching in Torah, that a Jew, and an extension every human being, but here really again we're focusing what Torah teaches to the Jew, that the Jew has in their heart and in their mind a natural love and reverence for Hashem. Now, that doesn't mean that you live by it or you're acting on it, that it's conscious. It's there definitely, and our job is to at least to wake it up and to bring it to the forefront. It says that in another place that the Jewish people are people of mercy, a people of mercy, and that's why when you by and large, you can, when you meet another Jew, you can awake that mercy that is deep in their DNA. There's certain things that it's just not Jewish to do, or sometimes you are surprised that a Jew can do certain things, right? Why is that? Why is we ourselves say that? What, a Jew can do this and this and this? And you say, why are you so surprised? A Jew can do it, a non-Jew can do it, and a Jew can't do it? Well, what's the difference? But you know that deep down there's something about a Jew, about the neshama, that is just in our DNA. And yet, when you're surprised, can it happen? Of course, it can happen. A person can deny their own natural instincts and choose differently. We have freedom of choice, but we have a certain ingredient that we just need to activate. That is a treasure that we receive as a gift, not to take it for granted. And again, it doesn't make us special. It doesn't make us more special. It means, again, we are given an extra battery, so to speak, to do good, to be a light unto the nation. And so that's level 2. So if you don't have the power to create those feelings, go inside of you. And he said, even inside of you, there is using it, bringing it to the heart, which is deeper, because the heart is feeling. And we're talking about reverence and love, which is feeling. And if that's not possible, you don't have the tools to do so, start with your mind. Because mind controls the heart, meaning you have the ability to think. Everybody has ability to think. Every normal human being, by nature, has the ability to think, right? You have to teach it. You have to be able to articulate it. But you can take a child, right? You can take a child and on their level, you can say, look, think about it. Who created the world? Who created the sun? Who created, and come to the realization that Hashem is amazing. And even if you are so a person that doesn't have the capacity to plug it into their heart, start with the brain. That's important. Continue. So reverence God. So section 2, a basic meditation before any mitzvah. And by the way, everything we're saying here, and it's going to say soon, it should be the really basic meditation before every time you do a mitzvah. So these are very important teachings, not so deep necessarily, but very but simple tools we can implement. So reverence of God is acquired in 2 phases. First, you simply accept God authority. even though you don't yet feel drawn to worship him in your heart. And if it was up to you, you'd rather do something else. You're a bit like a waiter in a restaurant who carefully offers service, but only because he has to, not because he wants to. This initial phase is referred to as Kabbalah's O, which means accepting God's sovereign authority. It's the beginning of worship because it is something that you strongly resist and must force yourself to do out of necessity. In other words, if your spiritual flame is very weak and you can't get excited about anything godly, the solution is to force yourself to accept God's authority. In the second phase, you begin not merely to accept, but to internalize and own your feeling of reverence for God, so that they manifest in your mind, your heart, and your personality. As we shall see, both phases, accepting and internalizing, are necessary for proper worship. But the Tanya will start with the basic meditation aimed at helping you to accept God's authority at the beginning of worship. This is an extremely important and accessible meditation, which ought to be used daily in your struggle against selfish and negative inclinations. Why? Here he quotes from a letter of the Rebbe. The Yetzer Hara, which is the evil inclination, is never lazy and is very busy and industrious in his efforts to distract the Jew from his service to God. Therefore, you must have a ready weapon with which to combat with him. For this reason, I suggest that you should study well and learn by heart the beginning of chapter 41, until those sacred words are engraved upon your mind and memory, so that you will always be able to recall them and think about them whenever the need arises to overcome a temptation. So here's the source of the letter the Rebbe wrote to a probably yeshiva boy in 1966 to advise him, person who was complaining that they can't deal with the Yetzer Hara, they can't deal with the evil inclination. And this is really key, that evil inclination is never lazy. It doesn't mean we are never lazy. The evil inclination, the power, it never sleeps. It makes us lazy. But on the other occasion, the meditation has been recommended to help with anxiety, depression, laziness, negative thinking, anger and pride, and bad character traits in general. The meditation explores 4 ideas. Mainly, number 1, the awesomeness of God's power. 2, his energizing presence in the world. 3, his personal relationship with you. And 4, his unwavering interest in you. So again, I want to just, we basically taking everything we'll learn and bring it very much in practical steps. So number 1, what he said here, something really important, is what he calls Kabbalah's all. What does Kabbalah's all mean? Translates, accepting God's sovereign authority. You know, we are trained that we live in a democratic society where we are trained that you don't do things just because you were told so, right? You have an open mind, and you should be, and you are part of the conversation, and you're part of making the decisions, and you can bring your individuality into the picture. Accepting an authority is a dictatorship, right? Accepting an authority as somebody forcing you something is a dictatorship. Not what we're saying here. Hashem is not a dictator. We're saying here more to accept Hashem as an authority. Again, something that children have a problem with, right? That they don't accept parents as an authority. If you have to tell a child or a teenager right? Why they should listen to you, which is important because teenagers want to understand. That's great. And if you can communicate that and they can understand it, if they'll do it or not, but at the very least you explained it to them. However, if there is no authority of a parent, as simply your parent has a certain authority, and when they tell you something, you should listen, then the relationship becomes just about, if it makes sense, I'll do it. If it doesn't make sense, I won't do it, which happens most of the time. I can imagine that your parents' authority was very different than the parents of today. Used to be that parents said something, you didn't ask questions, correct? You didn't ask questions. It wasn't even to come up in your mind to defy the orders, for the good and for the bad. A lot of people had trauma because of that, because they felt that they were living in a relationship where there was forced things on them. The problem was that the parents never took the time to actually explain it to the children on their level, and obviously when they grow older. And the problem is, if the relationship is only about dictatorship or fear, reverence, and there's no love, then again, you don't have a complete building. So we're using analogies from parents and spouses towards Hashem. But here, let's take a step back. We're not going into conversation if a person believes in God, doesn't believe in God, right? That's another conversation. But as believers of God, we believe that God is the creator of the world. And God created me, and God gave us a Torah, and God put me on this earth. It makes very much sense that I can accept God as the authority. If God is the creator of all, then he's the authority. Not in a negative way, not as a dictator. He created me. Now, if I don't take that as a basic, then doing a mitzvah without that foundation of just accepting his authority is in the sense limited and self-serving. Then I'll do the mitzvah if I am in the mood. Then I'll do the mitzvah if I understand. I don't understand, I won't do it. So that's why teaching this concept of reverence for Hashem, to accept Hashem, no matter what, in your life, meaning no matter you accept that whatever he says is the truth, but the truth, and I live by this, I live 24/7 in his presence, that is the foundation of the first part of doing anything in life. And that should be the morning activity, the meditation. I am your servant. I am here to serve. I'm here to do what you want me to do. Please, Hashem, give me the koyach, the strength, and the means to do it. Moda Ani really is expression of Kabbalah's all. Because what does Moda mean? Thank you, Hashem. I'm grateful. When you're grateful and you say thank you, you're saying that I'm the non-deserving of it, and I'm humble to get and be in the presence of it. And I cannot repeat that more and more again. This is what we teach again every morning, every day. This we teach our children to serve Hashem with Kabbalah's all, with just unconditional commitment. Now we're going to get to part two. Remember, this is not where it begins. It is not where it ends. It begins with that, but we want to get to the individual my individual personality and character in my relation to Hashem. But I think this is really key. The problem of Jewish continuity, Jewish survival, assimilation, because this concept has been thrown out the window. Kabbalah's all. And it's not a negative thing, it's a positive thing. Sometimes people say, just accepting God's presence, accept it, even if you don't like it, even if you don't understand it, accept it. It goes against our notion in society we live today. Because when you have that foundation, then you are committed to the cause. It's like a soldier in the army, right? A soldier in the army. We are soldiers in Hashem's army. Now, and he's saying, and the Rebbe says, your evil inclination is not lazy. It's going to fight you. So don't think that you're going to just do it without it is going to give you the tools to overcome the challenge of your evil inclination if you don't have Kabbalah's all. And it's not just saying accept it. There is a meditation why you should accept it. And this is where we get to. All right, I feel like I'm for bringing here, but not, we got to learn a little bit more. Is it clear so far? You guys accept it?
Unconditionally.
Unconditional. Okay, so he said here and said, by the way, that helps with, he says, the Rebbe speaks out, it helps with laziness, it helps with anxiety, it helps with negative thinking, with anger, with pride. We learned in the JLI class yesterday, the most repetitive instruction in Torah is al tira, don't be afraid, right? Chapter 23 of Psalms, right? I am the Lord your shepherd. Don't be afraid. God says, don't be afraid. Why? Because he's with us. He's with me. I know Hashem is in my life 24/7, and I'm in the presence of Hashem. And that takes care that anger, anxiety are just expression of because I'm lacking trust and believe in Hashem. So let's continue. 4 ideas. Number 1, awesomeness of God's power, which is in a sense pretty easy to meditate on. You don't have to be a scientist or a professor to recognize the awesomeness of Hashem's power. Just look outside your window. Number 2, his energizing presence in the world, as we learned, that he's there every moment. And number 3, that he has a personal relation with you. And number 4 is unwavering interest in you. Not only he has a relation with you, but he has an unwavering interest. He always wants to know what's up with you. You know that one friend that you have that always cares about you, that always calls you, how are you, that you can talk to, and you feel so good. That friend gives you that kind of the feeling of security. That's what King David says. Hashem is our shepherd. He's there every moment, taking an interest in how you are doing. So let's continue. First, think of 1, his supreme power, which rules over all worlds. Psalm 145, upper and lower. Your reverence of any authority will be proportionate to that authority's power. God's power is supreme, ruling over the entire universe. But thinking how God has power over the worlds is not enough. You also need to meditate upon God's presence in the world and contemplate how all existence is saturated with God, who fills all worlds, and how all existence is engulfed in God, who transcends all worlds. As the verse states, do I not fill heaven and earth? So God is heaven, God is earth, God is everywhere in the upper worlds, lower worlds, spiritual worlds, physical world, everywhere. The next stage of meditation is to contemplate how you are in personal relationship with this all-powerful and all-present God. And think how he has disregarded the worship of the upper, lower spiritual worlds. And in giving the Torah to us, he has specified his desire to be worshipped as king by his people, Israel. We learned that also in Tanya, that what Hashem decided that all the spiritual worlds, the angels and the high spiritual worlds, which are so crazy amazing and so spiritual and so holy, God chose, he said, I don't care about the worship of the angel. I care about the worship of the Jewish people by coming down, giving us the Torah in this physical world. In giving the Torah to Israel, God entered into a unique relationship with one particular people. It ought to make you feel honored to be chosen by God to worship him through the covenant. But you still might think to yourself, there are many members of the covenant who worship God. That's why is my contribution so important? Me individually, therefore, the Tanya adds, which is level 3, that is generally speaking, you have a unique relation with God due to his covenant with Israel, but your relationship is even more personal than that, since God has indicated his desire to be worshipped by you in particular, since a person must say, one of the most famous lines of the Talmud, what? The world was created for me, for my sake. The Mishnah derives this lesson from where? From the narrative in the beginning of Genesis. God created the world initially with just one person, Adam. Everything else that God created was created in multiples. God didn't create one rock. God created mountains and thousands of millions of rocks, many animals, many fish. But when it came to man, God created Adam alone. To teach us this teaching, that just like Adam, we all have a personal relationship with God as if no one else existed. And that's why the Talmud, the Mishnah says, a person has an obligation to say every day that the world was created for my sake. Sounds very egotistic. The world was created for my sake. I'm the king of the world. No, what the point is that you have to tell yourself that imagine the world was created just for you, meaning only you, Hashem wants a relationship just with you, and only you can do the job. Nobody else can do the job. Don't say, let him do the job, let them do the job. The fact that God created you, God looks at you as if you are just an atom. You're the only one in the world, and only you have the relationship with Hashem, and only you can do what he wants you to do. So it's not an ego-driven idea. On the contrary, it's a tremendous, powerful, empowering concept, if you think about it, that I have a job to do, and nobody else can do it. And you, in turn, accept upon yourself God's sovereign authority, that he is to be king over you. Not let the rabbi serve God, or let the Kohen do the job. The awareness of God's special interest in you ought to be reciprocated. He thinks you are special. He's chosen you as an instrument of his deepest will, and that will make you want to mirror that energy. And don't think that your response to him is insignificant. Don't say to yourself, what could my finite worship mean to an infinite God? Right? Okay, so God shows me, but what can I do? My little action, what does it have to, what does it do to an infinite God? If it's an infinite God, then my finite action doesn't make any difference to him, because if it does, then he's not infinite. What's infinite mean? Infinite means that there's no finite, there's nothing finite there. The moment there's something finite, it's not infinite anymore. If you say that infinite needs something finite, then it's not infinite. So that's something people think also. My mitzvah, what does it do to God? It cannot do something to God. God is infinite. God is complete. God is not incomplete. But you say God needs my mitzvah, that means he has a need. So don't say to yourself, what could my final worship mean to an infinite God? Because God is described here as king to indicate that your worship matters to him, in contrast to a dictator who imposes his will on others whether they like it or not. The appointment of a king depends on public acceptance. There's no king without people. For the people to be in relationship with the king and to be bound by his ruling, they must first crown him and accept him as their leader. Like we do Rosh Hashanah, we blow the shofar, we accept Hashem as our king. What's the difference again? King, we think about kings as dictators, but in essence, in Torah, a king cannot become a king if they were not elected, they were not made king by the people. So a dictator doesn't care about the people. When Hashem refers to him as a king, he's expressing that my existence, my being king, is depending on the relationship with you, that you want me to be king. So as strange as it may sound, God wouldn't be a king without you. He would be a dictator, but not a king, something which requires your acceptance. And since, as we learned above, he has disregarded the rest of the universe, all the spiritual world, has specified his desire to be worshipped as king by you in particular, it follows that the entire universe only exists for the sake of your worship. So when you accept upon yourself God's sovereign authority that he is to be your king over you, you make the whole universe worthwhile. Accepting God's authority means to worship him and to carry out his will with all the different types of service required from a servant. You come to realize that the reason why you are here is for something much, much bigger than your own personal fulfillment and happiness. It is even bigger than your relationship, your career, your hopes, and your wishes. So why were you put on this earth? You were born because God wanted you to fulfill his intent. So you choose to express your relation with God, not only in your heart, but in every aspect of your life. So worshiping him and carrying out his will unconditionally, in a sense. And so this was level 3. This is all in the concept of accepting Hashem as our king. Just to add one point, when I said how can it be that my mitzvah makes a difference in Hashem if he's an infinite God? So we learned about this in the story of Purim. We learned this in earlier in Tanya as well, that God is beyond infinite. We think about in our own limited mind, we think about infinite versus finite. God is beyond infinite, meaning God can do anything he wants. And God shows that he wants a relationship with us, not because he needs the relationship. God doesn't need, when we say need, it's a contradiction. But God chose to want to have a relationship with me and me individually. And God wanted me to crown him as a king, giving me the power, giving me the empowerment that I create the kingship in Hashem. How do I do that? By accepting him as the king. Not by forcing, oh yeah, I have to do it, because I recognize that he put me on the earth and he's the king of kings, and I want him to be my king, and I want to do what he wants him to do. So all this is all a very powerful meditation, if you think for those in every level, to get me going in my relationship with Hashem. And the last thing, we're going to continue. The final section of this meditation encourages you to contemplate God's vigilance over all your action and his intimate awareness and concern with what you are doing. So we said earlier, one is the awesomeness of God's power, that he's so awesome. Number 2, his energizing presence in this world, that he is involved in everything in this world. And his presence, he makes everything alive. Everything is his energy. And number 3, that he wants a personal relationship with you. And number 4, he's going to talk about not just he wants a personal relationship with you, but he cares about everything you do. There's one thing, I want to have a relationship with you, right? I want to have a personal relationship with you. Okay, so there's relationship, there are many levels. There's spouse, there's children, there's friends, right? Obviously, the more deeper relationship, the more intimate a person is. But if I want a relationship, the relationship will always be limited because there will never be that both parties will know each other through everything that exists inside of you. It's impossible, even with a spouse, right? And there are aspects in your life that is not of interest to the other party, because it's in a relationship, it's the two parties are limited to what the relationship is about. So a rabbi-student relationship, my relationship with you is study Torah, help you with your religious life, and help you with sometimes emotional issues, whatever it is. But it's limited to that. And trust me, I don't want to know more. not because I the last few weeks I've been off Facebook. Facebook has been always such a challenge for me because in a sense, a very powerful tool to share Torah and to share programs, etc. But when you're on Facebook, you start reading what people are saying about themselves. You start looking at them like, and I'm not interested. If you went to the bathroom or you went shopping there, you went eating there, don't want to know these things. Sandy's laughing. So I took Facebook off my phone. So I don't have Facebook on my phone. I go online and I post mainly Chabad stuff on it.
I don't do Facebook.
You don't do Facebook. There you go. Somebody posted, I decided one day to have a lot of friends. So I went on the street and I put billboards, poster boards, what I'm doing all day long. And I start poking people and telling people that I went to the bathroom there. And now the police is after me and the psychiatrist is after me. And basically we do exactly the same thing on Facebook.
That's right.
That's the normal. That's the normal.
But young people don't use it. Now it's an old people's tool.
That's true. The young people don't want their parents to know what they're doing.
They never did.
So they have their own.
Beginning, it was
Right, so now they're on Instagram and they're on TikTok and all the other
Exactly.
stuff.
Yeah.
And they're going to be the next one. We're going to go over to TikTok and then they're going to go somewhere else.
But TikTok's really weird.
The point is here like this. Here, this is really very powerful. And I want to tell you how powerful this is. These next few lines, and that the Rebbe the Rebbe was very into children, obviously learning Torah, but he made a whole campaign in the 70s, and especially in the 80s, where he created a Jewish children club. He called it Tzivos Hashem, the army of Hashem, and he empowered the children to feel like they are soldiers in Hashem's army. And one thing he said is that he selected 12 passages from Torah, from Talmud, from Tanya that the kids should learn by heart. All my kids know these verses by heart. They're very easy. They're 12 short verses. First one is Torah Tziva Lanu Moshe. Second one is Shema Yisrael. The fourth one is like this: Vehine Hashem Nitzav Olav. Okay, look at the next word here in the Hebrew. It's right here. It's from Tanya, right? Our next word. Vehine Hashem Nitzav Olav. And look, the God is standing over you. Umalai kol haaretz kavodai, and all the earth is filled with His glory. Umabed olav uvaychin klois v'leif im avda karoi. And He's watching you. He's checking your inclinations and heart to see if you're worshiping Him properly. Meaning, the idea that God not only wants a relationship with you, but God is intimately aware of everything you do and takes an interest in and a concern of what you're doing. And what's the meditation? So the conclusion of these 4 points of meditation is, and therefore you ought to worship Him with awe and reverence, and your awareness of His presence should be palpable and tangible, as if you're standing right in front of a king. You might imagine that by letting go and accepting God's authority will be unhealthy, denying your needs, urges, and individuality. In reality, the opposite is true. Your sacred inner core, which subconsciously influences all your thoughts and interactions with others, desperately needs to surrender itself like a burning flame needs oxygen. Self-centeredness starves that flame. Surrender fuels it. So by letting go, you don't deny yourself, you discover yourself. This isn't something that erodes your identity. To the contrary, this is your identity. This is your neshama. Self-centeredness, saying, I don't want to accept an authority, I don't want to accept Hashem's authority, that actually erodes your essence of who you are. But taking upon the Kabbalah's oath, right? That letting go and accepting God in your life is fuel for your neshama. And you should think deeply about all of this. He's not telling you just to do it, but think about it, meditate on this at length, however much your mind and thought can grasp, and according to your time constraints, especially before starting Torah and performing mitzvahs, such as the daily worship of donning talis and then tefillin. As we learned above in chapter 4, the Torah was not merely given from heaven, it's a taste of heaven itself. The mitzvahs and Torah texts provide divine clothing into which every part of your consciousness and behavior can dress itself to access God's infinite light. So when you're about to observe a mitzvah or study Torah, it is important that you focus on what's inside the clothing, the divine will, and not let them be obscured by the clothing itself, the reason for the mitzvah and the details of its observance. And that's why the above meditation is extremely important before studying Torah and performing mitzvah. Preparing yourself to worship him and to carry out his will in any fashion that might be required of a servant means that you're focusing on the mitzvah as an instrument of divine will, which is the core identity and inner energy. Even if the Torah has an obvious reason, such as don't kill and give charity, it's important that you accept God's sovereign authority and be conscious of the mitzvah as the divine will before you focus on the mitzvah reason or utility. Because in that way, you will access the inner light of the mitzvah, which is the most powerful transcendent energy. But remember, accepting God's authority, Kabbalah's oath, does not in and of itself connect you to God. It is the actual mitzvah that is the divine will, and that is what forms your connection with God. Kabbalah's oath opens you up and sensitizes you to divine light within the mitzvah. It helps you focus on what the mitzvah is really about, and that's why you should do the above meditation before studying Torah, before a mitzvah.
Wow.
All right, so the idea, this is the last part, again, to make this a little bit more easier language, when he said that a mitzvah is connecting to the divine will of Hashem. The divine will, so what is a mitzvah? We learned in chapter 4, what is Torah study? It is not that it came from Hashem, from heaven, it's actually a piece of heaven itself. So it's actual Hashem's will himself, closed in the garment called a mitzvah. So, for example, lighting Shabbos candles. So the lighting the Shabbos candle is the garment that Hashem's will, Hashem's essence, is closed in. So if you only focus on the garment and not on the inside, what's inside the garment, you're missing out. You're missing out of what the mitzvah is all about. And he said that kavanah that we learned in the other chapters, which means some of the basic kavanah, which is to understand why I do a mitzvah, to learn the details of the mitzvah, to understand the words I'm saying, in itself, it's also still the garment. It's not the inner will. If I understand I'm lighting candles because Shabbos is amazing, and Shabbos brings light to the world, so I'm not just doing this, but I'm actually thinking about it, then I'm connecting deeper to the mitzvah, but yet I'm still only connecting to the garment of the mitzvah, which is the expression of Hashem's will. I'm not connecting to the inner will yet. How do I get to the inner will? When I start a mitzvah by saying Kabbalah's all, I'm surrendering, I'm doing Hashem's will. Hashem is the sovereign authority in the world, and I have the ability now to connect to Hashem. Now the connection has to happen through a vehicle. The vehicle is called mitzvah. So don't just have Kabbalah's all, he says at the end. Just don't accept Hashem as your authority and then say, okay, now if I'm accept Hashem as authority, then it's my inner neshama is connecting to Hashem's essence, because I'm just accepting him simply, unconditional. But remember in chapter 39, 40, it has to come into a physical garment. Now I need to light the candles. In a sense, that's why we make a blessing before a bracha, before a mitzvah. Why do I make a blessing? Baruch Ata Hashem, blessed are you, Hashem Elokeinu Melech Haolam, King of the universe. Every blessing starts with Kabbalah's all. That's the Kabbalah's all I'm saying. I'm not just lighting candles. I'm not just lighting the menorah. I'm not just blowing the shofar, eating matzah. I am doing this because I'm expressing, starting with the foundation that Hashem, you are the authority. And I want to connect to you. And how do I connect? Al netilas yadayim, lahad l'gvir Shabbos kodesh, by lighting the candles. I need to have both, but the foundation is Kabbalah's Ol. And that's a meditation. That's not just saying the words, that's a meditation. That's why when Hashem gave the Torah to the Jewish people, he asked the people, do you want the Torah? The Jewish people said two words, Na'aseh v'nishma. We will do and we will listen. We talk about it so many times, right? When you go into a business deal, you don't just say, I'll do it and then I'll listen to the details. First, you want to hear the details and then I'll do it. Jewish people are smart business people. How come we just went and said, yeah, we'll do it and then we'll listen? Hashem gave them the Torah because we will do it is Kabbalah's Ol, is unconditional surrender. And that's what the Torah is all about. That's what the Jew is all about. Now let's make it happen. It's just a daily activity. It's a daily meditation. This is not a one-time thing, and it's not easy. You know why it's not easy? When you have such resistance to this concept, why do you think it's not easy? Because your evil inclination cannot take this. Your ego cannot take this. Nobody wants to surrender. Nobody wants to surrender. What do you mean surrender? I don't surrender to anybody. That's exactly it. If we can learn to surrender to Hashem, it's amazing. Make it a great day. Any questions?
When you say that children learn by heart,
Yeah.
they learn it in Hebrew
Yeah.
with all the references, right?
With?
The sources where it comes from, the way it is here.
It depends on the age. And I when I was a young, my kids probably don't know where the source of it is. Of everything, you know. I showed the video before. The Rebbe had rallies for children on the holidays.
Yes.
In 1991, I was with a few thousand kids, and they picked 12 kids to recite the 12 verses. I got to say the ninth one, which is a passage in the Talmud. It's very short. I can show it to you. But they make now something like, for example, and we teach it now in the Hebrew school actually. But they have it online. They have. I'll show you just for little kids. When you have a lot of grandchildren, you can get these. If you go to Chabad.org, let me get to the website here. They have these songs where the kids can learn. Just to give you, you know, we think sometimes of Tanya being so, you know, it's deep. It's how do kids even, but if you go over here, I'm going to share screen quick here. Happened. Looking for the share screen. I don't know.
We can find it on Chabad.org, right?
Am I sharing screen already?
Only the picture we see. We see the picture of your family.
Okay. All right. So that's why. Hold on a second. I'm on a second screen. Okay. Sorry. Now, let's. Okay. And now we'll go here. And
Yeah.
this has here Chabad 12 Psukim.
The Sukkim.
Yeah, the 12 Torah passages, right? So this is the website for kids. Torah Tziva, Shema Yisrael, right? And here is V'hinei Hashem, chapter 41, right?
Yeah.
Okay, it's all in kids' language, right?
That's
Imagine
exactly our level. That's
That's
exactly
your
our
level. Right? Imagine when the palace of the king, the rooms, the walls, the gorgeous furniture, all around, everything splendid, princes and rulers, dressed in gold and silver, stand about in awe, waiting to do the king's command. or even just to see him, you pass among them, and all of a sudden you find yourself before the king. No one says a word. The king is looking right at you, watching with interest as you come near. Imagine how would you feel? In fact, that is exactly how we stand all the time before Hashem, the King of the world. I mean, simple but profound. And now look at this. They make these chilled characters like Disney characters.
Wow. Amazing. Amazing.
All right.
I have a question. I sit next to Susan on Shabbat, and some of the songs that everybody sort of takes for granted, we were wondering if there was a way to even phonetically, so that we can sing along or know what the songs are, because if you don't grow up with it, you don't know what the songs are. And then go with the prayers, and even though they're so simple, maybe, repetitive, like at the end of a lot of the prayers are, it's just, Rabbi, you'll say, because you've done this, and then everybody says, and blessed are you, O Lord. And then, but if you don't know the exact words, you're reading it in English, or we're reading it in English, but we would like to know how to join in.
Yes, you're right, and we need to offer more teaching and classes. You're right, but I will also be happy to refer you to online to songs, or there's so much online. So if you go to Chabad.org/prayer, you'll find all the songs. You find
Where is that under prayers?
The prayers, but specifically, if you want to have specific prayers that you that on Shabbos morning you want to learn more, I'll be happy to give you the guidance on it.
But you just type the name of the prayer, and it gives you, and it's online. They sing with you very slowly.
Yeah,
That's how I learn Shema. They do it very slowly,
exactly.
word by word.
So there is an infinite amount of teachings online, but specifically about prayer, and I'll be happy to send you some links to it.
Because I know, Susan has mentioned it, and then there's some of us who when we don't know, we would like to be able to join.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay, good enough.
Yeah, I'm looking to hire a full-time teacher as additional to what I'm limited. I'm actually thinking of we're actually developing this. That there's a lot more that people want to learn, and we have locals, and I'm even bringing some people here that can help our community people to develop more learning in davening, whatever it is. So stay tuned.
That's a good
channel.
idea.
Same channel, same place.
It's this is a Baruch Hashem, we are a growing community, and there's a need for that, and so we actively looking into this. All right, enjoy and make your day great.
Thank you.
You as well.
Lots of Kabbalah as well. Talk to you later.
Thank you.